Well, it's a new year, so I've decided why not make a new video. And because it is a new year, let's just get this out of the way and say Happy New Year. But really, I want to talk about the arbitrary nature of people. And the new year is a good representation of how arbitrary we are, because time didn't change. Yes, on a calendar, the year changed and the month changed, but things didn't really change. Yesterday, which was the 31st of December, it was Monday. And today, which is the 1st of January, and the brand new day of a new year, it's Tuesday. So the week is just moving along. Nothing new, nothing different. The year didn't impact how time moves or how the week proceeds. But we've decided in our way of thinking that things are all new. It's brand new. It's time for resolutions and changing. It doesn't really work that way, but we make it that way in our head. Nothing is new and nothing changes unless we decide things are going to be new and different, and we make them new and different. But perhaps the new year is just an opportunity for us, much like religion or any other belief is, to find a way to be happy with the way things are. So, for anybody that needs the new year to try to cope with life or make their life better or give themselves an opportunity, well, by all means, Happy New Year, because we all need that. I'm not dissing on anybody here. We all need an opportunity to feel like things are going to be better. We all need a way to escape from the normalcy of our life and the repetitiveness of our life, and to try to just forget about things for a while. But let's talk about the arbitrary nature of people, because time in and of itself is probably something we don't really understand fully, but it's something that we've arbitrarily cut into pieces as far as measurement goes. We decided arbitrarily what a second would be, and then based on that determination, we decided that 60 of those seconds would be a minute, and 60 of those minutes would be an hour. But that's all arbitrary. Time doesn't change because we give it a measurement, or we give a certain period of it a name. So a minute is still time. It hasn't changed. It doesn't change. We just arbitrarily decide to measure and name it. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that either. It's nice to try to understand something and talk about it in a way we can all agree on. Although sometimes we arbitrarily decide things, like, for example, hey, let's call this distance a league, and then for whatever reason it doesn't quite work out, so we wind up changing it, and at some future time, hey, let's call this distance a mile, and then things don't necessarily work out, and we decide, hey, maybe we should call this distance a kilometer, and Americans aren't smart enough to figure out the metric system, so we say, no, let's go back and call it a mile, or whatever the particular distance and time unit of measurement or distance unit of measurement is. I'm just pointing out the arbitrary nature. I do understand that a mile and a kilometer are not the same, or any comparable type of system. Think of the Gettysburg Address. 4 is how it starts. Does anybody even know what a score is when it comes to time? And we're not talking about music. 4. Does anybody know what that is? I know I used to, but I don't anymore. And that's funny. But it used to have a measurement, it used to have a meaning, and it used to get used. I don't think I've heard anybody ever use that as a measurement of time. It's an arbitrary decision that just kind of faded away. But I want to talk about other arbitrary decisions that we make. I've seen a lot of times there's some pretty hot topic issues that come up, mostly on Facebook. And mostly I'm dealing with things that go on in my own country, the United States, because that's where I live. So that's what I'm most aware of, because like most Americans, I'm pretty ignorant about what goes on outside of the borders of my own country, let alone my own state. But as Americans, we like to think we know a lot, so it's not true, but we like to think that. Anyway, one thing I've noticed is, and it really strikes me as funny and annoying, is that people will get really angry about the fact that some people are on welfare and they get public assistance. And it's like, they don't deserve to get money. Or somebody wants to get paid $15 an hour to work at McDonald's. And people are like, they don't deserve $15 an hour to flip burgers. But some of these same people have no problem whatsoever that a professional athlete makes $17 million in 3 years. Or whatever the case may be. I don't really follow sports. But I remember seeing a statistic once about how a football player, and I don't even know who he was, made something like $33,000 a minute for playing a football game. And that's a conscious choice that society has made to allow these people to have that type of income. And you can say, yes, they have a job, and yes, they do something, and yes, you derive pleasure from watching them play that game. But is it really worth $17 million for 3 years, or $33,000 for a minute, or whatever it is that they make? Maybe my numbers are off. Is it really worth that? Just to play sports? Is that really worth it? Because when they make that much money, it impacts the economy. Because when someone makes that much money, somehow the rest of us, the rest of the world, has to compensate for them making that much. People that own the sports teams and the stadiums and however that all works, they don't just give that money out of their pocket for pure pleasure and entertainment because they have so much. Somehow they charge somebody else to compensate for how much they're paying their employees, just like any business does. So when you say, oh, this guy shouldn't make $15 an hour flipping burgers, well, why should this guy make $30,000 per minute? It's just an arbitrary decision. Same type of thing, just opposite ends of the spectrum. Why shouldn't some guy make enough money to actually survive if he's working? Because I'll tell you what, when I drive through Wendy's or any fast food place, I want to get my food and I want it to be right. And if that guy makes $15 an hour so that I can drive home quicker with my meal, personally, I'm a lot happier than I am hearing about some guy making $30,000 a minute because he might run down the field with a football. And yes, I do understand that if I was thrown in the place of any of those professional athletes, I would probably be dead in about 10 seconds, literally, because I can't do what they do. But it's really funny because these professional athletes are under so much pressure to perform and to win. And they can't make the money that they make if they don't win. and they can't get the ads and the sponsorships that give them the extra money that they want if they don't win and if they don't perform. So they're under a lot of pressure, and a lot of them resort to using illegal substances, drugs of one kind or another. And a lot of people are just like, oh, that's all right, he was just trying to do the best he could. But yet when people who make no money resort to using drugs or illegal substances because it's the only way for them to temporarily escape from the pain and the suffering and the misery of their life, they're horrible people. And that's just an arbitrary decision that we make. Same thing, just opposite ends of the spectrum. But there are other things. I watch people complain about freedoms and how as a country our nation is the best in the world and it's the most amazing because we have freedoms. But somehow we don't realize that most other countries also have freedoms. But we like to think that we're the best here in the US. So we talk about freedoms and how amazing it is, and we have freedom of speech and the freedom of religion and freedom of the press. And then when someone comes into our country and they're a Muslim, I see lots of posts about how, oh no, our country's going to become a Muslim nation. It's supposed to be Christian. Well, it's not supposed to be anything if it's free. If there's freedom of choice, it's not supposed to be anything. It can be whatever it wants, based on choice of the people here. But when it's not what you think it should be, then all of a sudden your opinion on what freedoms are good and how they're used changes because you have an arbitrary decision. And that just goes to show how closed-minded people are. Our arbitrary nation, that wasn't what I meant to say, our arbitrary nature as people is the primary reason we have a closed mind, because we pick something and we stick to it, and we're not able to go past that arbitrary decision. I don't care what political spectrum you lean towards. If you like Trump, if you don't like Trump, if you liked Obama, if you didn't like Obama, whatever, most people don't look at the person they're voting for and say, okay, I like this person's opinions and ideas because this one is good or this one is bad. They just look at the person and say, oh, he's Democrat or Republican. So because that falls into my arbitrary choice of what's good, he's good. But people are a lot more complex than a large-scale decision. And I watched people talk about the Kavanaugh, it wasn't a trial, but when they were having the Senate hearings or whatever it was with Judge Kavanaugh, and I watched people being interviewed, and they said, well, I don't really care whether he did these things or not because he's Republican and I want him to be on the Supreme Court because of it. Really? And don't get me wrong, because I'm not bashing Republicans. Democrats do the same type of thing. Oh, it's okay, he's a Democrat, it doesn't matter that he did this or that. It's okay. And I constantly see posts on Facebook from whatever people are angry saying, oh, the other side, people that don't believe the way I do, said this was wrong, but when it happened when their person was in charge, it was okay. Well, what are you complaining about? Are you complaining about the other side? Or are you complaining about them not agreeing with what's going on, because I don't hear people talking about the issue at hand. I hear people complaining about the other side. And if all you're going to do is bash the other side, that just shows closed-mindedness. So we're all arbitrary in nature, and the new year just helped reinforce that in my mind. I watch people talk about down south and how the southern states are amazing, and the rebel flag is a sign of freedom and whatever else it's supposed to be a sign of for these happy people. And they talk about how when the South seceded from the U.S., that was amazing because they were trying to stand up for states' rights. And if you actually take the time to look at what states' rights they were really interested in, because it is public record, and every state, when it seceded from the nation, wrote down for posterity, for everyone to read, why they were seceding from the nation. And those states' rights that they were really, really seeking all went straight back to how their economy was based on slavery, and they, as a state, wanted to have the right to determine that slavery should be legal. Because slavery and the abolition of slavery was going to be crippling financially to the southern states. So they were really mad, and that's what they complained about. And it's all public record. You can go look it up. But people who are gung-ho about the South being traitors because seceding from the nation was against the law, and going to war over their decision to be traitors because they wanted money at the expense of equal rights. People who support the South doing that are angry because someone who came from another country and got citizenship here decides to show their dislike for something the government is doing by setting a flag on fire or walking on a flag. And so these people who support the South in being traitors because they wanted slavery to be legal are angry because someone walks on the flag, because of something that they also disagree with most times. And I just don't understand. I don't understand how we can't see past the arbitrary decisions that we make. I don't understand how we suddenly decide that everything is better because it's a new year. Actually, what we decide is that we're going to go out and party, and here's an excuse for why. But when we look a little bit closer, who we are and what we are and why we are those things is really disturbing. And most of it's arbitrary. And because it is, most of it simply represents our closed-mindedness and inability to see past our own perspective. And if there's anything that you can see this year, I hope that for some of you, it's a little bit more open-mindedness and a little bit more clarity. Because critical thinking, understanding all sides of an issue and a topic, tolerance, understanding, these are important things. And I hope that in 2019, even though I don't think it'll happen, as a people, we can embrace those good ideas and those good notions of humanity and equality, instead of just being arbitrarily closed-minded. Happy New Year.